Hey everyone, so this is going to be 725 Vengeance Demon Hunter Rotation Guide. So what I'm going to go over this is the DPS rotation and the survival rotation. Now the DPS one, this isn't going to be the maximum DPS, and that I will do in a future video. Right now I want people to focus on how to do damage when they're off tanking, how to do survival when they are actively tanking. So I want people to focus on that because we have the new raid coming out. We have some changes, new rotation. People are confused about what's going on. So I want people to focus on what can help them right now. So going into it, these are the talents. These are generally the talents you will run. Uh, you, this is what a raid setup will look like. So Razor Spikes, it's good offensively. It's not. It has very little defensive benefit, mainly for kiting, but it's still good for DPS if you can get the pain generation to do it because you need to put out the fractures. And we're using spirit bombs. We're getting less shears, means less pain generation from shears, so we need more pain generation from damage taken. So it'll be good in raids and harder content and whatnot. So Abyssal Strike will be our go-to for most cases, and when you because you're going to take Flame Crash pretty much always, so you're going to take Abyssal Strike, so that way you focus on using Demon Spikes as a defensive and not an offensive ability. And then next we're going to take Fallout. It works well with Spirit Bomb, so you're going to be taking it on everything because it's extra soul gen. Flame Crash, it's really good. Fellblade isn't as good now because it doesn't generate a soul, it only generates pain, so it's not as good as it once was. Fell Eruption is okay, it's not amazing, but it'll still be good on single target, but in general, you're going to be taking Flame Crash, especially when because you're using Abyssal Strike, so it'll be good. It's good, better on any AoE, and on single target, they're very close. And then Fracture, you're going to take it always. It's the best one for DPS and survival, which I'll get into later. And then the next row is going to be whatever you want. Conch Sigils, people generally take it because it does at the player, and it's a slight DPS bump, especially when you're using Flame Crash and Abyssal Strike. Quicken Sigils and Sigil of Chains are both viable. Sigil of Chains you'll use in dungeons, and Quickened is fine for using for extra silences. But all three are viable, and you can use any which one you want. It just really depends on the person. Spirit Bomb, you're going to take it always, so it's going to be best for DPS and survival. Fell Devastation got buffed, Blade Turning got reworked, but Spirit Bomb is still really good. And in the final row, it's going to be Last Resort, Demonic Confusion, and Soul Barrier. Uh, all three are viable in most cases. Demonic Confusion will be better when you're using Razor Spikes or for extra Demon Spikes out time. Soul Barrier is good for magic reduction, or if you need a cooldown for something like Bonds or something like that, then it's good. Last Resort is fine for general use, for if you don't need Demonic Confusion or Soul Barrier, and it'll be good for just if you're lazy. I'll be honest, I use it sometimes because I'm lazy, and if you don't need the others, then it's just kind of there in case you mess up, because there's times you will mess up. So it's just kind of a fail-safe. So this is what a general raid build will look like with these talents. Again, on last row you can take whatever. For that row, you can take either chains or for conch sigils, and that's pretty much it as far as the talent. Okay, the survival rotation. So you're gonna start with your normal opener, leap in, brand, Immo Ara, and then you're gonna wait a couple seconds and you're gonna cast Soul Carver, so that way you don't overcap, because Firebrand now caps at 10 seconds, so you can't go over. So you're just going to pop Spirit Bombs, so that way you get the frailty up, and then it's just gonna be overcapping on souls. So fracture, and then a couple shears, fracture again. So that way you're keeping Painbringer up always, and you're keeping up your trickle healing coming in from consuming souls constantly. And then you're just gonna cast Spirit Bomb to keep up the frailty debuff. And it's just going to be repeating that. The idea is just you keep auto-consuming souls, so you keep going over the 5 cap, and then it just auto-consumes it, and you'll keep getting healing, and you'll keep getting Painbringer. And defensively, it is better to hold Soul Carver, and in this case, I'm holding Soul Carver and Immolation Aura for when Firebrand comes up, so that way I can extend it as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and Firebrand and MOR and then go back into the Soul Carver, and it's just repeat that. You're just going to keep overcapping on souls, using Demon Spikes as needed, keeping frailty up so that way you're constantly getting the leech healing, and that's it. Alright, the DPS rotation, you're going to start it out the same way with your brand and then Immolation Aura, and on AoE, you're going to Immolation Aura, and depending on how many ads are out, because of Fallout, you can get the 5 souls. So you're going to, if you have enough ads out, you can Immo Aura and then just immediately Spirit Bomb. And then go into Soul Carver, into another Soul Carver, and then you can do like a Fracture and then a Spirit Bomb, because there's a time between when Spirit Bomb or a soul spawns and then it lands, and then you can use it. So also what you'll see me doing here occasionally is I'll be at 4 souls, and then I'll cast Fracture again immediately into a Spirit Bomb, and then I'll usually have 1 soul left over. And that's just because of the way it goes, because it lands, the buff updates, and then you'll get to do the Spirit Bomb. So then that 6th soul doesn't land until after you cast Spirit Bomb, so then it's left on afterwards. So that way you can always have a 5 Spirit Bomb. And it's just going through the motions, pressing all your buttons, and that's pretty much it. Spirit Bomb and Fracture is the vast majority of your buttons there. Alright, one last thing I want to talk about is Soul Cleave. So you don't use it offensively, really, and defensively you only use it for the heal, and it competes with Spirit Bomb for the healing. So 5 soul Spirit Bomb is better on 3 targets or more healing wise, because Spirit Bomb applies the frailty debuff before the damage, so and it's fire damage, so it gets 35% healing, leech healing from the damage. So the healing on that adds up to roughly 3 targets, and if one of those crits, then it just lowers the amount that's needed immensely. So 3 targets or more, Spirit Bomb will do more healing at 5 souls. Otherwise, Soul Cleave does more healing, but the way you want to do it is, the way you min-max it, is you do Spirit Bomb and then a Soul Cleave afterwards. So that way you get the most out of the healing. Because Spirit Bomb will do they both do the consumption healing from consuming a soul. You still get the Painbringer, you still get the Fueled by Pain, or the Fueled by Pain proc, and you still get the Soul Barrier shield, regardless of how you consume it, whether you run over it, auto consume, Spirit Bomb, Soul Barrier, Soul Cleave. But it's better to do Spirit Bomb than the Soul Cleave, so that way you get the maximum amount of healing out of it. So if you use it defensively, like I said, you're still going to use the auto consume as the main thing, but you have those 2 as a backup, and that's how you use the 2 of them. So you still, Soul Cleave is, don't take it off your bar. A lot of people will meme and troll in Discord, and they'll say, oh, just take it off your bar, it's useless. Well, it's not useless, because you can still get a healing out of it. Yes, you're most likely not going to use it nearly as much, not even as much as Nighthold, maybe about as much as most people are using it in Nighthold, but it won't be that useful, and it's not a main button in our kit anymore. It's more of and it's not even like an oh shit, because it's only about 10% or so healing from a Soul Cleave plus whatever souls you consume. So that's why you do Spirit Bomb and then it, so that way you get the Spirit Bomb healing plus the consume. So you should see you'll get more like a 20%, 25% healing, maybe even 30%, depending on how much damage you get done out of a Spirit Bomb. So that's just how you use Soul Cleave. So it still, like I said, still use it, but it's not as important as it was previously. If you want the weak aura that I was using for the souls, this actually updates faster than the buff tracker itself. So our old soul fragment weak auras always went off the buff tracker. This goes off of when they land, which is when you can use them. Now do note that when you go over the cap and you auto consume, the auto consume happens before you can cast anything. So the auto consume will happen before Spirit Bomb, even if the buff tracker will go. So sometimes the buff tracker, if you go over fast enough, it'll say like 6 or 7 souls. But what'll happen is the ones over 5 will get auto consumed, and then the rest will go into Spirit Bomb. Like if you go over to like 6 and you casted Spirit Bomb, then it'll auto consume 1, and then 5 go into Spirit Bomb. So you'll only get 5 souls in the Spirit Bomb. You won't get like 7 or 8, whatever it is. So that's why sometimes the buff tracker will go over, and that's just because the landing of when the buff gets updated, or when the weak aura will get updated, is before the auto consume happens. So it'll go up to like 6 or 7, and then it'll go back down. And there's a slight delay from when it'll update based on like range and stuff, because it has like believe it's a 1.5 second checker where it'll check what the buff says, so that way it'll do out of range and whenever souls like go disappear, because they disappear after 20 seconds. So it's really good. I recommend everybody get it, check it out. I'll have a link in the description, and I'll also have it on the Discords. It's posted and pinned in both Discords. If you have any questions, feel free to hit myself up or anybody within the Discords, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. All right, have a good one, guys.